This presentation provides an overview of the Victorian Auditor-General's report, Managing the Performance of Rail Franchisees. Public transport is an essential service for many Victorians and is critical to the state's economic development. Public Transport Victoria, PTV, manages the contracts with the operators that run the metropolitan passenger, train and tram networks, known as franchise agreements. These commenced in 2009 after a competitive tender process. Since 2009, the state has paid over $7.6 billion to the franchisees to run Victoria's train and tram networks, $5.4 billion to Metro Trains Melbourne, and $2.2 billion to Yarra Trams up to 30 June 2016. PTV has commenced negotiations with existing operators for a potential 7-year extension. This presents a significant opportunity to address weaknesses in the current agreements and seek improvements in new franchise agreements, which will be known as MR4. We examined whether PTV's management of the franchise agreements is delivering value for money, including their oversight of maintenance and renewal of the train and tram assets leased to the franchisees. We also examined PTV's planning for the extension of the franchise agreements. Train and tram services have become more reliable and punctual under the current franchise agreements, and customer satisfaction has improved. However, weaknesses in the design and implementation of the performance regimes prevent PTV from maximising value from the current agreements. There are significant weaknesses in how PTV oversees the maintenance and renewal of assets leased to its franchisees under the current agreements. In particular, PTV does not have adequate medium to long-term asset strategies for its train and tram network assets and has poor knowledge of asset condition. PTV has completed a thorough assessment of the performance regimes and reporting in preparation for the next agreements and has identified ways to address these weaknesses. PTV measures the performance of its train and tram operators or franchisees in several ways. It measures and publicly reports on the reliability and punctuality of train and tram services and surveys customer satisfaction with rail services. We found there are no targets for the reliability and punctuality of trains and trams. These measures are not aligned to the operational performance regime, which measures the impact of service delays and includes financial incentives and penalties. PTV largely abandoned the customer experience performance regime in 2012 due to weaknesses in its design and cost associated with conducting inspections of the network. PTV has thoroughly reviewed the regime and plans to implement a revised regime in the next agreements. PTV needs to improve its contract management systems and processes. In particular, gaps were identified in knowledge management processes, tracking benefits of the contracts, risk management and governance. PTV recognises these gaps and has started to address them. The lack of medium and long-term asset management strategies means that PTV cannot provide assurance that assets are contributing effectively to service delivery or that there is effective planning for maintenance, upgrade and disposal of assets. PTV's lack of meaningful information about asset condition reduces its capacity to plan, budget and prioritise maintenance and renewal work. It is positive that PTV and the Department of Economic Development, Jobs, Transport and Resources have begun to address these weaknesses. Train and tram franchisees met the required performance benchmarks to negotiate an extension to their agreements. However, PTV could not provide evidence to support the rationale for some of the benchmarks or how they were assessed. Other benchmarks were set at levels that did not drive improvement in performance. PTV has prepared for future franchise agreements by thoroughly examining the strengths and weaknesses of its current agreements, including developing an in-depth understanding of operating costs. This puts PTV in a good position to negotiate important improvements with the franchisees. We made 5 recommendations to PTV, focusing on strengthening performance monitoring and public reporting, addressing weaknesses in contract management and asset management, using lessons learned to improve the negotiations of the next franchise agreements, and improving data collection. PTV accepted all of the recommendations in the report and provided a detailed action plan on how it plans to address these recommendations. For further information, please see the full report of this audit on our website, www.audit.vic.gov.au.